Hey, it's Felicia Gopal of Financial Control Mastery, and I am with you today to just answer a question that I just got asked, which was, why is financial independence so important, and how'd you get started with this? And I just really wanted to kind of take you back to how this became an important topic for me and take you on my journey. So it started about 20 something plus years ago. And I was working in the estate planning department of a law firm. And everybody that I was working with was basically a millionaire. If I was working with you, you had to be a millionaire because I was preparing your tax return to report kind of state of affairs to the IRS. So that was kind of the game plan. Now, everybody there was a millionaire, but what I noticed is that they were doing something fundamentally different from my parents. My parents both worked civil service jobs. They worked really hard. What they taught me was you work really hard, you get a good job, you get educated, and that's the way that you have success. But these guys were doing something fundamentally different, and they had results that were fundamentally different. They had businesses, and they had stock portfolios, and they had real estate. They had all this stuff. And what I really noticed was not just the stuff. Of course, I'm going to notice the stuff. I get that. But the thing that I was really noticing was that what they had was freedom. They had the freedom to do what they wanted, when they wanted, and have the assets and arrange things to do what they wanted. And I wanted that. And that was fundamentally different from what my parents were teaching me and was showing me. Now, what really drove this home for me is I had a client during that time who had a red Mercedes convertible. So our procedure was, what we would do is we would take a picture of the assets, and I was looking at it and I said, oh my goodness, that is my ideal car. I really would love to have a red Mercedes convertible. And he said, and he just moved on. And so we worked together over the next 6 to 8 months. And at one point, he offered me the opportunity to buy the Mercedes. Now, you have to understand that it was the deal of a lifetime. And I wanted that Mercedes. But what happened was I didn't have the assets to do it. I didn't have the income to do it. I didn't have the savings to do it. I didn't have the credit to do it. And so ultimately, what I had to tell him is thanks, but no thanks. It was a heartbreaker for me. And he said something to me that really profoundly changed my life at that point. He basically said, every single day, Felicia, you work with millionaires. And I'm pretty sure you get a pretty good wage, and I was for a 20-something-year-old person, and you are not handling your finances well. There is no reason why you shouldn't be able to buy this car, and I get that, but I really couldn't. I had to, ultimately tell him thanks, but no thanks. And it started me on a journey, and the journey was, now, if you know anything about me, I was a good student. I'm the type of person who studies real hard, gets into good schools, and then applies it in my life. And that's just my success formula over the years. But what I was finding is that my success formula wasn't going to get me to the freedom that I was looking for. So I had to come up with a different path. But before I started that, I started studying stocks. I started studying bonds. I started studying real estate. I started studying all those sorts of things. And it got me really interested in this whole field that I knew nothing about, which is personal finance. And I changed from being an accountant to a financial planner about 20 something years ago. Got that. Now, what happened after that? Well, I continued to work in the field. I was teaching people. I was showing people how to retire. I was showing them how to build their assets. I was showing them all these things that I had learned from my reading. But I will tell you, there was a gap. The gap was I was learning all this stuff, and I was teaching people how to do that. And I believe that I really served them during this time, but I wasn't really showing them how to get to the point where they could be financially independent. You could work your entire lifetime and not become financially independent, is what I learned. And that was a big gap for me. That was a big gap for a lot of us. I mean, if you've got parents like mine, and you could kind of shake your head at home, but if you've got parents like mine, you've heard very similar messages. Work hard, get educated, get a good job. And the truth is, that is a very successful model that worked when my parents were growing up. It's not a particularly great model for today, and it's certainly not the model that you need to follow if you want to be financially independent. You've got to do something very, very different. So what I was noticing about those people is that, first and foremost, they were arranging their finances differently. They were doing things that were different from what I had been taught. And again, I said, I want that. I want to be financially independent, but I didn't really know how. I did not know how to be financially independent. You know, just working hard, building my assets, that wasn't getting me to being able to stop working. There was a disconnect there. So why am I telling you this? I'm telling you this because for a lot of the people who follow me and follow what I talk about, is they're really interested in financial freedom. Yes, they would like to have assets. Yes, they would like to have a home. Yes, they would like to have a business. I get that. And I can help you with all of those things. But ultimately, the reason they do what they do is because they want to be financially independent. And how do I define financial independence? Financial independence is being able to have your income and assets, creating an income so that you don't have to work. Now, that's the game that my clients are interested in. So let me take you back. So again, I ended up taking about 7 years off to take care of my father. So I took 7 years off to take care of my father. He had dementia. It was what I needed to do, and I was more than happy to do it. But when I decided to come back into financial services, I started to think, well, who do I want to serve? What do I want to do? Do I want to do it the same way that I've been doing it? And I was like, no, I'm not particularly interested. And I had a coach at the time. Her name is Shola Abidoy. And Shola talked to me about a concept called FIRE, Financially Independent Retire Early. And that sounded really good. And I was back to, I want that. I want to retire early. But again, how do you arrange your finances? What do you got to do so that you can be financially independent and retire early? I wasn't quite sure. So I went back to when I started, and I started to look at what did they do and what did I already know that I could put together and show other people how to do it. So what I ended up doing is, of course, I ended up doing it for myself first. And, I built a course that was really designed for me to help me understand the path to financial freedom. So I created a course for me, and then I started to share it with other people. But before I even did that, I want to kind of take you back to, it was partly a mindset shift that I needed to make. And let me just give you an analogy or a story that just kind of drives this point home. So here's the thing. There was a gentleman by the name of Roger Bannister who in May 6, 1954, ended up breaking the 4-minute mile for running. But if you look at the years before that, a lot of people had attempted it, but nobody had ever broken it. And it became one of those things, accepted things. You can't do it. It cannot be done until Roger Bannister did it. And the thing that I think is really, really interesting is only 45 days later, a gentleman by the name of John Landy ended up breaking that 4-minute mile too. So what was the difference for those two? So first and foremost, Roger had to break that barrier that was holding a lot of people back, that about the 4-minute mile. And then because he had done it, then John Landy said, I could do that too. And so for me, this is about financial freedom, is about people understanding that not only did have people already done this, but you can do it too. So it's about breaking the barrier yourself, and then for me, breaking the barrier myself, and then showing other people how to do it. And that's exactly why I created the Financial Freedom Fundamentals course, so that you can understand that the barrier has been broken. I have my friend, there's a gentleman by the name of Mr. Mustache who is financially independent. There's a woman by the name of Liz Greneau. She is also financially independent. If you go and Google FIRE community, you'll find that there's a lot of people who are living this lifestyle. And so if they can do it, then you can do it. But it's about understanding what you've got to do in order to do that. But to take you a little further back, or to take you further into my world, one of the things that I've noticed about personal finances, there's a lot of people who are financial advisors, financial planners, whatever you want to call them, but not a lot of them look like me. I'm a CFP professional, and in the CFP professionals, only about 2 to 3% of us are look like me. So that's the thing. And so when I started to look at this whole financial independence thing, I noticed that there weren't a whole lot of people who look like me. And that to me was a little bit of a problem. As I said, there's Mr. Money Mustache, there's Liz Greneau, but I then came across a woman by the name of Marjorie Edmonds, who was somebody that Shola introduced me to, who was financially independent, and she had retired in her 40s. And then I was on a podcast, and there was a woman by the name of Kendra Barnes, and she was financially independent. And then there was Monica Paul Holmes, and she was financially independent. So there was a lot of people who were financially independent that looked like me. So I started to understand that it was about a mindset and a shift in what you were doing that was going to take you and make you financially independent. It was not about a particular thing. Because I think sometimes we think, oh, I'm not going to be financially independent because nobody in my family has. Well, nobody in my family has. Well, yeah, I'm not going to be financially independent because nobody's ever taught me that. Well, nobody in my family ever taught me that. But the reality is I have gotten to the point where I am financially independent. And my game that I'm playing for this year is to see if I can generate enough income to retire my husband so that he can be financially independent. I currently have enough income coming in from the assets that I put together in a structured way that allows me to cover all of my expenses. And I'm going out and I'm teaching other people. I teach other women. I also just started with my children. My 19-year-old has gotten her first job. And so I've got her on the path to financial independence. My 16-year-old has expressed an interest in learning this topic too. And so I've got her building her assets in a way so that she can be financially independent. Just realize it's about understanding the structure of how you've got to structure your assets. And I have a framework that helps people do that. And I deliver that inside of my Financial Freedom Fundamentals course, which I am inviting you to check out. So if what I have shared with you sounds interesting to you and sounds like something you want to learn a little bit more about, please hit me up and leave a comment below. DM me and ask me about that, and I'll tell you about it. So over the next couple of days, I'm just going to be telling you a little bit more about the course that's coming up in February. And hit me up in a DM if what I've said to you resonates with you and you have worked really hard and you're looking for how do I change things so that I can be financially independent. I can help you with that. And just hit me up with a DM and I would be more than happy to talk to you about that. All right. Have a great day, you guys.